Now alright, Link's Awakening. We've all seen it, we've heard about it, it's coming to the Switch, it looks a bit funky, but it does look really good. Well, to me at least. However, there's also a certain feature that not a whole lot of people have talked about or even showed off in any way. What I'm talking about is the fact that you can make your own 2D Zelda dungeons in this game. As long as you've beaten enough of the dungeons and done enough things in the actual main game. This time around, Nintendo has included Dampe in the game, and using him you can make all kinds of different dungeons, using certain set pieces to get it all together and make sure you can even get to the end. And the only thing that really matters is beating the boss. So what we're going to do today is take a look at this and see what this could possibly mean in the long run, and if a new Zelda Maker game could be on the horizon. Now, first of all, when you see it, you think it's just building your own dungeon and beating it and then going on to the next one. However, what you actually need to do is build a dungeon that is solvable, which is also a puzzle in itself. You need enough keys to get through it all. If you don't have enough, then you will run into problems and then you can't solve the dungeon and you will have to go back to the designing phase. So whenever you're making a level, you need to keep in mind that there's a boss, an entrance, and enough keys and things in order to actually solve it. Otherwise, you can never continue on to the next Dungeon Maker challenge. Personally, I love this aspect. It makes it more than just a dungeon maker and adds a cool puzzle element from the very start. It makes it harder and more challenging, which is in my opinion always a good thing. Although I can understand that some people wouldn't like that kind of element and just want to make dungeons and go through them. It's understandable, however personally I would say that the puzzling aspect adds a ton to it. All of a sudden, it's complicated from the very start and you're already busy with a puzzle. So even making the levels is basically a game. This means that there's more content and that it's more fun to actually do, in my opinion. You have to try again and again with different layouts so you can finally figure out that one dungeon setup that works. And I bet that there are multiple ways to solve it, as long as you have enough pieces. The sad part about it though is that all those dungeon pieces are preset. You can't really customize them in any way. However, it seems like there are quite a lot of them, so I bet the experience will be different every single time. Now, okay, you've made your dungeon, it's all ready, it works and it fits, you have enough keys in it, you checked everything, and now you're going into the dungeon. What can you expect? Well, the main goal is to get to the boss, which means getting through a set number of rooms and making your way to the boss, and also grab the key on the way there. Besides that, there aren't really any objectives. We haven't really seen any item rooms. So, as far as we know now, it's just making the dungeon and making sure you can reach the boss and the boss key, so you can actually defeat him and finish it. Besides that, you don't have to get a specific item first or activate a certain thing. Just go to the boss and be sure to have the key and you should be fine. It's simple and doesn't make it too complicated, however, it is also very limiting in my opinion. The only thing that really matters is getting to the boss, and everything else is just who cares really? You don't have to do it. Just beat the boss and you're done. All of this kind of makes the dungeons a bit limiting in my opinion, because you can't add a whole lot of different elements, puzzles, features, connecting things, because the only thing that matters is just the boss key and the boss. I can understand why they did it like this, because it keeps it a bit simple and doesn't make the dungeon designing too complicated. However, it is very limiting for those that really want to go in depth. But what happens after beating such a dungeon? Well, there's more to it. Because for completing these challenges, you do get rewards from Dampe, like a fairy bottle, and probably stuff like heart pieces, which means that this feature is crucial for 100% completion. But we aren't certain what kind of things you could get from it, so it could also be very minor things like rupees, or gigantic things like heart pieces or other very important items that you need to collect for 100% completion. But how do you unlock all the rune pieces? Well, for this you just need to play through the main game. Defeat all the dungeons, get all the instruments, beat the final boss, you know what I'm talking about. The cool thing about this is when you start off making dungeons and you've already completed the game, you have a lot of different pieces that you can use to create all kinds of different dungeons. Especially in the earlier ones that don't have as many rooms, you will have a ton of options when you have all the pieces unlocked. I bet you can make a ton of different combinations, which would be fun to experiment with and even to go through. Maybe you can even make themed dungeons. Think of stuff like a boss rush, where you use all the bosses in the game and put them back to back to back to back, and you need to beat all of them before you're finished. Or something based around traps where everything is a big threat to you. There are so many different options, it's insane. Personally, I would love to make some sort of combat dungeon, where you have to defeat all kinds of different bosses, enemies, and just get your way through without dying. I think personally this would be a great challenge to do. And another effect all of this has is that it gives people a reason for completing certain aspects in the game, because you can get dungeon pieces from it. And using those, you could make more dungeons, which is exactly what you want, because it's more and more and more content. So obviously, people are going to complete those tasks just for the dungeon pieces. So I bet a lot of people that care a lot about the dungeon making experience will certainly 100% this title. But what happens when you've made all the dungeons you can possibly make, and cleared all of them, and got all the pieces? Then it isn't that much fun anymore, right? What are you supposed to do with all of this? Is it over? No, because Nintendo has actually added 2 more features that make it interesting, even though you've beaten all of them. Because they said during the Direct of E3 2019 that you will be able to share them with friends to see who can beat it faster. I'm not exactly sure how this will work and if you can share them with strangers or if it's like a friend code or like level code in Super Mario Maker, but they've certainly mentioned that other friends can play it as well. Your levels. They can try your levels, which is absolutely amazing. Do you even know how excited I am for this? I've predicted like a Zelda Maker like a year ago or 2 years ago, and now they're finally experimenting with it. I'm so incredibly happy. The only thing I'm just hoping for is that we have a lot of options and not a few. The more ways you can make levels and share them with your friends or even random people, the better. And since I mentioned that you can beat each other and try to best your friend's time, you know what this is gonna mean in the long run. Speedrunners will jump on this game extremely quickly and will beat each other's levels as fast as possible. We could possibly even expect marathons, races, world records for certain level builds, and way more. Maybe even a speedrun category where people try to build those levels as fast as possible and then beat them as fast as possible. All in one run. The amount of options this would give to speedrunners is absolutely insane, and I freaking love it. It's probably gonna end up being an extremely popular game at a speedrunning event as soon as it's out. So will we get all of this in the future? Well, I'm not certain. Personally, I hope that they will, because it looks absolutely amazing and a lot of fun. And this could even possibly become the actual beginning of a Zelda Maker, just like Captain Toad Treasure Tracker became its own thing after Super Mario 3D World. A game where you make 2D dungeons yourself, share them with others, do certain competitions or challenges, stuff like that. Well, now that this exists in Link's Awakening, it is certainly possible. But how much would they change? And what could they possibly add to it? Well, when it comes to this, there are a billion options, literally. Because, as you can imagine, the 2D Zelda games are quite free, and you can create all kinds of concepts, mechanics, bosses, things. So there are a ton of options, basically. We could certainly expect more rooms to choose from to make our weird little intricate dungeons. Probably from older ones, like A Link Between Worlds, A Link to the Past, The Minish Cap, and way more. Think of certain bosses from those games, or certain enemy types, or anything really. With that, the community could do so much and we could create anything we ever dreamt of. All the levels you ever envisioned when playing through the 2D Zelda games could finally be possible. However, if they will really do it is certainly a big question, with an even bigger question mark behind it. Maybe in time we will get an answer, however we can't be sure. Nintendo is always a bit weird in these types of things, and remember, Super Mario Maker also came out way after the modding community picked up making custom levels. But maybe one day we'll actually see it.